Hello and welcome to the Hoop Circle, and we're very happy today to have special guest all the way from Bali, Kenna. Hi Emma.
Hi Kay, it's very exciting to be here. Woo, got some lovely rain coming down, and yeah, so not exactly sunny Bali, but yeah, excited to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the programme. So I've known you for a long time. You've been hooping since 2007, but you actually, like me, started before that with poi spinning. You started in 99, I think I started in 2000. So what kind of stuff were you doing with poi, and how did you discover hooping?
Well, so my poi stuff all started in like 1999, which is completely ridiculous. So actually last century. So I started doing the poi from like seeing it at festivals and stuff like that. And then I was actually teaching poi at Secret Garden Party, which is a UK festival in July of 2007. And I was actually teaching poi, and there was another hooper called Anna Hooligan there. And she is an amazing performer from London, and but she picked it up at Burning Man, and like been around and like had like done loads of hooping with like the New York scene and all this. So anyway, she comes along and she's teaching hoop. And to be honest, no one wanted to learn poi. They were just walking past me. They were walking past me to the giant hoops, and I was like, no, come on. Come and see me and my poi. And everyone's like, and Anna basically spent 3 days trying to persuade me. Maybe it was 2 days. I keep expanding that. It's like turned from like 1 day to 2 days to 3 days over the years. But she spent about 3 weeks. No, spent about a day probably, like trying to be like, Emma, just pick up the hoop. Just have a go. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. No, I can't do it. No, I can't do it. No, I've just never been able to do it. You know, so I was definitely one of those people that was definitely very I can't about everything. And in the end, I basically, I just picked one up eventually, this massive 44-inch hoop, and then just spent the rest of the festival like, can do it, yeah! And I was and I just basically was shouting at everyone to come over and have a go, and they were like, no, you're really good at it. And I'm like, no, I was rubbish, I couldn't do it until yesterday. You've got to come and have a go, and all this stuff. So yeah, I was just like trying to force people to hoop for like 2 days. And then the thing that really did it was we did our fire show that night. And I know you've been in the Secret Garden Party fire show, haven't you? Yeah. Where, you know, it was like that raised platform thing.
Yeah.
And there was like that. I don't know if it was that year, but early days it was definitely like, you know, there was this sort of like raised platform, and we were all on different points. And I was at one of the lower points, and you know, I was like in my wellies and my jeans and my rubbishy vest top or whatever, and I'm like spinning my poi thinking I'm amazing, and being like, I'm so cool, oh yeah, I'm so good at poi, and 5 tricks really fast, oh yeah. And then basically I just noticed the whole crowd, including myself, everyone went like this, because Anna had just come in at the top. And I don't know if I've embellished this, but this is like literally a memory, and basically she just sort of appeared at the top of the hill. And I was like, and she's wearing like leather chaps, like tiny shorts and like leather chaps. And she's got like not very vegan now, but I wasn't vegan then, so it doesn't matter. And then, you know, it had like she had a fire hula hoop, and I've never seen anything like it. And I was just like, this is what I must do. And I mean, I think I assumed that I was going to look as cool as that when I was like, and I don't look the same as Anna, but I can do the tricks now, so that's good. But yeah, and that just sort of started things off really. I wouldn't buy a hoop because I was like, oh, £20 for a hula hoop, I'm not paying that. Are you serious, Emma? Are you serious? But no, I was also that person, and I essentially just wouldn't buy a hoop. I ended up making one, and I made a 42-inch hoop instead of the 44-inch hoop that I'd been using at the festival. Couldn't do it around my waist, classic. And it wasn't until actually the following January that I just was like, right, that's it. I'm going to get good at this. And I bought one of these super big 44-inch spongy, had this spongy tape on it, Hypnotica hoop, and it was a sectional. And I just hooped that to death in my living room with the curtains closed.
Nice.
For a long time. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. But I did a lot more at that time. Weirdly, it was actually years later, probably, or like at least a year or so later, that I really thought about like the off-body stuff, actually, and then started integrating like the poi stuff a bit more. because I think obviously before that it was just very, I mean, at that time hula hooping was on body hooping, and that's what you did, you know. And so I think, yeah, it's interesting, like that difference in my sort of early days, because I definitely feel like I was an on body hooper, 100%. That's what I did, and partly because I was inside all the time. Yeah, because, you know, harder to swing, especially when you've got 44 and a 44-inch hoop. You know, you're like taking it off your body to do like some sort of horizontal pass, and that's it. You're like doing it like this. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. It doesn't really work, you know. So like on body was really like where I started, and what I did for a very long time actually. And yeah, so that's like my how it began.
And that actually ties into how I started, because I met you because I was spinning poi at the Secret Garden party, and my friend, now friend, I didn't know at the time, the lovely Lady Jennifer Street, came over and was like, "Oh, you're really good at poi, you should come join our troop." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not that good at poi." So, "Oh yeah, come join in." And that was
that was the Big Chill Festival. I thought that was the Big Chill Festival, not the Secret Garden.
Oh no, you're right. It was Big Chill. You're all right. It was Big Chill Festival, and she came over and was like, "Come join us." And then you all and we were spinning poi, and I got talking to them afterwards. I was like, "I really want to do festivals. How do I get into it?" And they're like, "Oh, you can join our troupe. We're mostly based in Manchester, but there's 2 people in Bristol, and they spin poi." And I was like, "Okay, well, you can practice with them. Contact this Emma. She'll tell you all about it." And I remember phoning you, and I was like, "Hi, I met you, spin poi." And you're like, "No, we're not doing poi. We're going to do hoop. It's fine." And I was like, "I only know like 3 tricks." And you're like, "Oh, I'll just teach you the tricks as we learn the choreography." And you basically taught me 3.5 minutes of choreography with every trick going, "Do you know this trick?" "No." Like, "Okay, I'll just teach it to you." And I just learned so many hoop tricks because you taught me all of them as we did the choreography, and it was fantastic. And I was like, "Oh, I'm a hooper now." This is great.
Do we have video of that anywhere?
I hope
video
so.
Of that performance anywhere? Because I don't think I've got any of it. Wow, it's how great! What a world! What a different world that there's a 3.5-minute choreography that we have done together, and there isn't like 4,000 copies of that on the internet. It's pretty like that shows how long ago it was. It's like madness. Wow.
Hold the copy of that.
We'll have to. I'll have a little. I don't know. I've got so many broken hard drives with like random stuff. I'm sure it'll be somewhere. One day it will turn up. Maybe in another decade. If any hoopers we know have got that,
yes, please send them in.
Send it in.
And so it took you a little while then to transition from starting to hula hoop to going, "Okay, I can do all these moves with poi. I'll start learning twin hooping things." Was it how long was it into your hoop journey before you started working on twin hoop?
I'm not really sure, if I'm perfectly honest. I think I was always doing like so I suppose twin hoops. If I think about the first time I actually had 2 hoops, it was when I think I just decided to get 2 hoops, but I think it was more to do 2 on body actually than to do 2 off body stuff. I don't know. I must have done it. Do you know when you sort of think to yourself, it must have been happening? But actually it was like much later on, and I can't tell you when exactly. But what was her name? I think her name was Carrie or Cassie. Do you remember there was that poi hoop video? I feel terrible that I can't remember the name now. But I remember this video happened, and it was like a girl basically doing poi tricks, but with hoops. And it was like, why have we not done this before? This is ridiculous. And then it was when bags turned up on the scene, really, that the poi hoop stuff really kicked off. I mean, I must have been doing stuff before then, because I don't, you know, I'm sure I was doing weaves and stuff, but it wasn't like a big part of my hooping. My hooping was definitely very one hoop centric. So I'm not entirely sure when the poi hoop started to happen. I mean, definitely if you look at my videos from like, those videos from like 2011-ish, there's a lot of, like, I was doing tons of poi hoop and tons of twin stuff. So it must have been before that. Again, it's quite hard to tell because I didn't actually video myself very much, honestly. You know, if you did put a video out, you put like a proper video out on YouTube back then. And that for me, I think I did my first video in like 2010. And it was only because I was teaching at the UK Hoop Gathering and they wanted a video. And I was like, better like make a video. And I remember just being absolutely terrified. And it was made in Bristol. And I just, I ended up, I was at the do you remember the place that I used to have the studio at, where we used to run the hoop jams and stuff?
Yeah.
Where I used to, yeah, we did the super cold workshops a couple of times. Yeah, like, well, there's just no heating in here. Let's just do it in jumpers. But anyway, yeah, at that place. So I was down there, and it's like surrounded by graffiti and everything. And I remember just thinking, okay, I have to do this video. I have to do it. And I went home to get changed, like. And Ben was there. Ben Marshall who was living with at the time. Like, he was one of our shared house people, and he was like, "Right, you're gonna make a video." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make a video." And I was like, absolutely terrified. And we were out in the garden, and he was like, "Do you want a rum and ginger beer?" And I was like, "Yes, I want a rum and ginger beer." And at the time, obviously I don't drink now, but back then, you know, I was like, "Yes, I want a rum." Yeah. So he made me a drink. And we were out in the garden, and I was drinking this drink, and I was chatting away and being like, I could put this trick in it, and I could put this trick in it. And the two, I can't remember who else was there. Maybe it was Kat. I can't remember. Anyway, but Ben was like, you have to put this in it. Like, and I was like, what? And they were like, you have to put what you're doing now. Like, you're basically doing the tricks while you're holding your drink. And I was like, oh, okay. And then that became the thing of the video, you know, like, so I had this like video where I'm like drinking my drink and being like, hey, how's it going? And like, and I had a few drinks. That definitely helped. But that was like my first real hoop video. And I think that's the sort of, yeah, as you were saying, it's like, so you asking like when it was is really difficult, because like, if I think like my memory of things is like appalling. Like, I've forgotten whole festivals I've been to, not for any, well, maybe for some reasons, but mostly because my memory is just appalling. Like, I don't have lots of memories from childhood or anything like that either. So yeah, it's just like stuff so unless it's on Facebook or Instagram, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I did, brilliant. And this is pre all of that. So this is pre-Facebook, pre-being on Facebook, pre-being on any of that. So yeah, it really was just YouTube. And I think, yeah, it's so it's hard to remember. But if I think I started hooping properly in 2008, and then that video was 2010. So I mean, I must have been playing around with it from fairly early on. But I mean, as I say, at least the first year, I was using these massive, like 44-inch hoops. So anything more than this was probably not really happening, to be honest.
Could you hula hoop when you were a child, or did you only start later on?
Oh no, that time at that festival at Secret Garden Party was the first time ever that I'd ever picked up a hoop and been able to do it. So I've definitely, yeah, and I actually think this is something that's really huge with me. Like, bizarrely, I've always had a really I can't attitude as a child, and I don't know when that happened, because I think I was quite like boisterous and crazy for when I was a little bit younger. But then as I got older, I think I couldn't do a handstand, or I couldn't do a cartwheel, and then I couldn't hula hoop, and it was definitely like I got into this habit of having this really I can't attitude, and then I didn't, and then I wouldn't practice them, you know, like, so even when so I did my first handstand against a wall. I do have a video of that, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, at a hoop thing where I was like, right, I'm gonna get this. I'm just gonna get it, and I'm still working on my handstand against the wall now. But it's such an interesting, like, the hoop, well, the poise stuff first, but then the hoop stuff as well. Like, getting good at something that I didn't think I could get good at was like, I don't know, it's just really sort of changed my mentality about everything. And I think now, you know, it's very rare that I'll go into something and someone will say, do you want to try this? And I'll be like, oh no, I could never do that, because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, even stuff like, if someone said to me, if I decided I wanted to get into acrobatics, yes, I'm never going to be like a proper acrobat, but I know I could learn stuff. And if I practiced, I would get better at it. And I think that's kind of what the hoop and poi before. But I think the thing is, because poi was the first time it happened, it wasn't like, so I like wanted to do poi. I watched the people doing fire poi, and then I was like, oh, I want to do that. Well, I wasn't actually. A friend of mine, my friend Kat, said to me, Emma, why don't you learn how to do it? And I was like, and then I did learn how to do it. And like, I practiced every day in my garden with like home of poi tutorials, you know, and I was like, I'm gonna learn this, yeah. And then when I went back to Glastonbury the next year, I could do it, and I was in the fire circle. And I think that sort of attitude of outside academia, because I've always been academic, but I always thought like outside of academia, like hobbies wise, you know, I'd always sort of I tried to play a few instruments. I tried to like, you know, do a few different things, and it never really, nothing had ever stuck. So I just thought I wasn't a hobbies person. I just thought I liked getting drunk, basically. Like getting drunk and going to festivals. That's what I do. And that was great. Like, don't get me wrong, but I really like, I feel like I really came to life when I started, when I really got some hobbies, honestly. Yeah. And I like really got into them. And then with the hoop, it was like, for that to happen again, I think it was just this like, it was like reinforcing that idea that like, it doesn't matter that you're in your late 20s, which I think I thought was older.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think it was old, but I definitely thought I was a grown up. I mean, honestly, I think that I'm pretty sure I'm going to say exactly the same when I'm 50. I'm going to be like, going to turn around and be like, do you remember when you were 39 and you thought you were so grown up? So yeah, I think like, but I do feel like that. I feel like that about a decade ago, and it's but it's interesting. It's interesting that I really feel like it sort of opened up a whole sort of childlike, say childlike, but I feel like I missed out on a lot of stuff when I was a kid because I was scared, or because I thought I wasn't the type of person to do that, or I wouldn't look very good doing that, so why would I do it? Or I'll never be that great. And I'm not saying I was an unhappy child, like I wasn't in any way, but I was a very nervous, shy child. You know, I didn't talk to other people. I like, unless they were my friends, and I was super nervous until I got a bit older. So yeah, like I really feel like the hoop stuff and the poise stuff before has sort of like opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for me as a human being. Yay! Well done.
With that as well, because I think I grew up being dyspraxic and having coordination problems and thinking, oh, I can't do these things, and also thinking that people were naturally good at things. Like, and now when people say, oh, you're so good at that, I'm like, it's because I've just spent time on it. And I think it's so important to, especially with children or even with adults who have this mindset of like, you're such an amazing hooper. You're like, I've spent hours and hours practicing. Like, that is why I can do this. Like someone said it to me about, because I've become quite obsessed with cross stitching at the moment, and they were like, oh my God, you're so naturally good at that. I'm like, I did an art degree. Like, hopefully it's something's come out of that. Like, studying this.
That's a good point. I actually forgot that. I have been looking at your cross stitch and being like, goodness okay. all right, get a really amazing something straight away. But yeah, you're right. People forget like you know your other things, and I think that's the same with hoop. You know, like people forget, like especially with the poi hoop stuff. Like I'm talking to people in my twins classes, and they're like, oh, you know, you look so clean doing that, and I'm like, I've been doing these movements, be it with like, and obviously at first that was with poi. I've been doing 3-beat weaves with my arms since I was 19 years old, and I'm 39 now. That's 20 years of doing that, and for at least 10 years of that, this has been my job. Yeah. So imagine if every day when you went to work, you were doing a 3-beat weave. Probably you'd be quite good at it by the time 10 years had passed. But yeah, I really do think, yeah, I totally agree with the like, but I also understand that mentality of looking at something and seeing it as something unachievable, and seeing the end product and not really thinking about what's come before that. Yeah. And there are people that pick up hoop, and they're just very, very, very quickly able to do things. But then when you talk to them, quite often they've had some sort of sporting background, quite often they've had some sort of dance background, or like, especially people that have like, so take like, so someone like Brecken is a perfect example. She was never a dancer before. I mean, she is now, but you know, it's not a dance background she got, but she had a soccer background. So she's always been very in her body and physical. And I think that, you know, that sort of level of training your body, it all sort of is additive. And I think, you know, for me personally, like, you know, when I pick up another prop, like, so I've just got some fans, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not a fan spinner, but I know that there's like certain things with poi that I can do, and there's like all those things that feel right with staff, I could do those. And then I'm like, oh, what happens if I do the hoop tricks? Like, and like already you've got this like wealth of knowledge in this prop that you've never touched before, because you put the hours in the other things. And I think that's yeah, I think it's important to realize that when you're doing stuff. But like, yeah, and as you say with your art degree, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. It doesn't come in handy that often, but occasionally.
Yeah, well, at least it's not a science degree, to be fair. It's not like, when do I use mine? Or like, yeah, that's, I used that in my hula hoop class today. You know, the only time I use my my science knowledge is if I'm like writing comments on people's Facebook and fact checking and stuff on Facebook. That's like the limit of my like science crossover.
Well, I was going to ask actually, like, what did you do before you got into hooping? Because your story is very different to the majority of hula hoopers. So what kind of stuff were you doing with your life pre-hoop?
So I started off, I basically was a scientist. That's like the best way of putting it. So I did my first degree in Nottingham. I did a genetics degree in Nottingham, and that was great. And then my mum got very, very sick, and because she was very ill and we thought she had 6 months to live, it was a very hectic time. So I finished my degree and then went home to my hometown, and I was very, very lucky to have like 6 years with my mum that I shouldn't have had, really. But I went back home to my small hometown, which is awesome, but it's like not exactly got like top end universities and like places that I worked. So I worked in the local hospital, the next town's hospital, and I was a biomedical scientist for like 4.5 years. And then actually, while my mum was still sick, she sort of said to me, Emma, like, you can't just keep staying here. Like, you're in the, you actually, what she said to me was, you need to go and do your PhD. That's what she actually said. Pushy parent to the end. I was like, okay. So no, but that's what I did want to do. And that was my plan. When I finished university, I wanted to go and travel for a year. And then, you know, like the standard plan that like lots of people have, who go to university, and then my plan was to go and travel for a year, then maybe do a master's and then get my PhD, and that just life just doesn't turn out like that. So I went back to Corby and I ended up working in a lab for 4.5 years, and I trained as a biomedical scientist. So I like did the testing for like pregnancy testing on the urine, and then I did like mostly blood tests. I was in the immunology department, so we did a lot of stuff for like autoimmune disease and like HIV and stuff like that, hepatitis. And then, yeah, as I say, my mum sort of said to me, look, you can't just keep sitting here waiting for something to happen. Like, you know, she was coming in and out. She was doing loads of, you know, in and out of everything. Yeah, so in the end, I applied to a load of universities, and I got my PhD. I got the place in Bristol, which is a bit further away than I wanted to be honest, but it was one I got. It's quite actually hard to get back into academia, actually, once you've left, especially without a master's. And yeah, so then I ended up doing my PhD at Bristol, and it was during that time, so my mum died in my second year of my PhD, and that same year I found hoop. So that was like, it's really weird actually, because it's like the two phases, like there's this kind of like post-hoop life and pre-hoop life, and it corresponds exactly, incidentally, to pre and post-mum life, having a mum life, which I know is something you can understand, but it's like it's an interesting, like, it's weird to me now in hindsight that transition was so parallel, but I think actually there's a reason for that. It's because like I think I was able to get into hoop in the level that I got into it because I was in this kind of like extreme grief phase, and it just was like, it gave me sort of a thing to do with my time in the evenings that wasn't feeling miserable, and wasn't dwelling on it. And so what I did was I kind of used, actually, I didn't know I was doing this. Like, this is me like in hindsight. I'm like, little Emma, what were you doing? So like, yeah, like that's basically what happened. And I think my obsession with the hoop was very much stemmed out of the fact that I was in that period of my life where I needed something. You know, I needed something to be taking up my time. And at the time, I was obviously still doing my PhD. I was also a warden in a student house. So I had like, I think I had 4 jobs at one point. It was like ridiculous. So at one point, nearly a year later, I was already teaching hoop. So I was teaching hoop, doing my PhD. I finished my PhD a year, that's it. So after that, about a year later, I finished my PhD, I started doing my postdoc, but I was still writing up my PhD. So I was doing my postdoc, writing up my PhD, working as a warden in the student house, and teaching group classes on the side. I've got a problem.
Yeah.
I've got a problem. I've got a problem. But this is it. But generally with me, it's like, I know that's what I do. Like I'm an overdoer, and I say yes to everything. And it's something that like I've been working like on not doing. But also I know that when I'm stressed and when I'm unhappy, or when I'm like, I know that grief response, you know, if there's any heartbreak or anything like that, my immediate reaction is to like make myself insanely busy. And in some ways that's like really negative. It's like not very good for your own self-care. But if that is your self-care and that gets you through the grieving, then so I'm in like two minds about whether it's a negative or a positive. I don't think that I would be the hooper that I am. I don't even know if I would be a hooper if it wasn't for the fact that I was in that state of mind when that happened, you know?
Yeah.
So who knows? So it's kind of, yeah, so that's what I was doing before. And then it took until, I think it was like 2010. And I just decided, like, I don't know, I had multiple classes running. And to be quite honest, I think once my mum had passed away, I sort of realized that like the PhD wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't for me. It was like for her. She had to leave school when she was like 13, and then she went back, or 14, sorry. And then she went back later on and went to university and had all these opportunities. And so she just, like, my family just desperately wanted me to have those opportunities, which I did. And I'm exceptionally grateful of that. And I think until that point, I just assumed I was going to be a professor. Like, I just, like, even when I was doing the hooping, I was like, well, even like at the beginning, like, even once mum had died, and I was sort of like, well, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And then I just realized I just wasn't enjoying work very much. Like, I wasn't having a good time at work. I wasn't an asset anymore to my workplace, which wasn't fair on the other people I was working with, because my heart wasn't in it, you know. And you know, I'm not the sort of person that wants to go into the lab in the morning when it's dark, because it's the England, and then come out of the lab when it's dark. And you know, you might not have spoken to a person all day, because you're doing your own work, and it's just not who I am. And so I really just sort of, I don't know, I just sort of I made the decision to take a year off and then come back as a lecturer. That's actually what I did. And at the time I was with Nick Broyd, and fair play to him, he was just so supportive. And he said, look, he had a job at the time, and he was like, Emma, if you want to do this, then why don't you just try it, and we'll be okay, money-wise, it's fine. And then after the year, you know, you can get your lectureship or do whatever. And then it just spiraled, literally spiraled. And here we are 9 years later, and I live in Bali and teach hula hooping for a living. And yeah, so that's like, I mean, I'm still kind of like, did that really happen? Is it real? And I think for the first 5 years, you know, at least 5 years, it's only, I have to say, it's only fairly recently that people have stopped asking me, so, you know, when are you going to go back to science? And I'm like,
do you feel like there is pressure from outside or from yourself about changing careers and going into like a less conventional type of career and lifestyle? Did you feel like people were generally accepting? Because I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of the pressure comes from within, of you kind of thinking, oh, like, especially if you've been raised a certain way to think like this is where you're meant to be going with your life, that trying to convince yourself that actually there's a different path which is just as acceptable can be more about an internal struggle than anything external.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think a lot of it though is to do with how much you've already put into it. You know, like I know PhD sounds impressive, but in the science world, it's like totally bottom rung. Like you can't get into academia without having a PhD. Do you know what I mean? Or like, you know, you'll come in as a PhD student, and a PhD student is essentially just a dog's body. Do you know, you're essentially like the intern. That's essentially what you are. You're essentially the sort of person that makes the coffee in an office. You know, you run around and do your own experiments and stuff, but you really are bottom rung. Like honestly, like it's so weird when people are like, oh, PhD, and like when you're actually in the world, you're like, yeah, I'm like so down. Down in the science. But yeah, so like in that world, you're like, you know, you're just getting into it, and so you finally got this education. You know, you've got the PhD, which is absolutely hell on earth, you know, for nearly everyone that does it. The people that don't find their hell on earth should definitely be in academia. But I mean, like, it's not a pleasant, you know, like, I'm sure it aged me about like 20 years doing that PhD. It was, I mean, of course my mum died in the middle of it, which doesn't bloody help. Like, it's like, stop it. But it was, do you know what I mean? It was like, it's hard for everyone. It doesn't matter your personal circumstances that are happening in it. It is a killer. And so you finally get this thing, and then you're like, nah. It's just like, seriously. So you kind of hold on to this idea of this thing that you feel like you should be doing because you've put all the effort in there to get to the start point. And I think that's the thing about it, is like, you know, and I've got like, what, 13 years of scientific education to get to the point, or like 12 years or whatever, to get to the point where I'm now a postdoc and I can actually be a scientist. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. It's hard to like, and then to know that you have literally 0 qualifications in this new thing. You know, I have no dance or fitness qualifications or anything, none of it. Like, I have none of that. I tried to write a CV for something the other day. It was for, someone was doing a scholarship thing, and they were like, oh, you know, it was a grant application, and they needed me to have like a full CV. And I realized, like, I'm writing this CV, and if I write my actual CV, it's like so many qualifications, it's a little bit disgusting. Do you know what I mean? And then I write my hoop CV, and I'm like, do you have any dance qualifications? No. You got any fitness qualifications? No. How long have you? And you're just like, wait, hey, I don't even have any relatable GCSEs. Do you know what I mean? I've got nothing. I've got literally nothing. So like, it's like, you know, you're going back to essentially square one of, and especially when you've grown up in, I say grown up, but I like, you know, my career path was very qualifications based, you know, so it's all about, what did you get in your GCSEs? What did you get in your A levels? And then what degrees do you have? And all of that is like the most important thing. And then you just have to essentially like throw those all in the bin and be like, I'm doing this thing, this other thing. Be great. I suppose what you're saying is true. Like, and people say this to me, they're like, oh yeah, but you got stuff out of it, didn't you? And I'm like, got some debts. There's definitely quite a lot of debt I got out of it. No, I mean, obviously, like, it will have shaped how I think analytically, you know, and I think it's very important. I think how I think about things in terms of analytical thinking, and looking at the sources of my information, etc. I think all of that has been highly valuable in my life. Whether it's been valuable in my life, I don't know. And people are like, you know, but you're so analytical, but like, this is the thing, is like, the reason I did the science is because my mind is analytical. You know, actually, that was a natural tendency that was then, you know, that went into science for that. So you can't, I don't know if that actually shaped, I don't know. I mean, and I get to put doctor in front of my name, which makes me happy. That makes my dad happy. Whenever I send anything to my dad's house, I'm like, Dr. Emma Kerr. And he's like, oh yes, I've got a letter from for the doctor. Best doctor in the family. So you've got to put it on everything. I put it on my passport as well. I actually had someone come to me on a plane and be like, are you a medical doctor? And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm sorry. I'm not.
Don't come to me for help, please.
I thought it would be, you know, get upgrades and stuff like that, but nah.
Do you think it's influenced the fact that within I mean, one of the things that you're best known for within the hoop world is your amazing teaching abilities? And do you think that that is what's kind of led into that, the fact that you're a very analytical person and the fact that you've studied?
Yeah, I think it's the two things. I think the two things that I'm good at. Are sort of being fairly analytical about stuff, but also I'm good with people. And I think that's the thing that was really missing in my sort of science life, is that I didn't actually get to interact with other human beings very much. And that's definitely where my strong point lies, and that comes from my family. You know, my whole family, they're all like I'm the quiet one. I'm the quiet one that jokes get made about, you know, like, you know, my sister and my dad and my mum was super chatty. Like my mum was more like me, like we're both just super chatty. We just like to know about everyone, and we'll talk about ourselves and talk about other people, and we just want to know everything. Whereas like my dad and my sister are just funny. Like they're just properly funny, like really, really funny. And so like this idea of being social and being around people and like enjoying, like genuinely enjoying interacting with other human beings, regardless of whoever they are, is something that has been ingrained in me since I was a kid. And so I think that sort of eagerness to sort of communicate with people and understand how other people are communicating, and then add that to the analytical stuff, I think that's where the teaching, and I know you have this as well, so I like, this is also why you're such a great teacher, but I think it's those two things combined. Like it's actually like the love of people, and then the love of how, like then actually understanding that there's like a skill to that, and understanding that you can improve on that is something that I think it's like the combination of the two. But I just like I quite like getting good at things, you know. Actually, I'm a bit of a show off, and I also really like being good at things, and I like puzzles, and I like things like that. So I think of every interaction, teaching interaction, and I know you're the same with this, like I think of every teaching interaction like, how can I fix this it's a communication problem. If I can't tell you how I'm doing something, there's got to be a better way of me saying it. And you know, and part of that is like knowing how the other person learns, but also knowing how to say things properly, I think is so I think it's just, I just find teaching in general, and it was always my favorite thing in science as well. Like we used to have, you know, I used to have PhD students that used to come at the end. It was always PhD students, but then we had undergraduates that like I used to teach, and then I've done quite a lot of tutoring, like in my spare time. Like it's always been something I've enjoyed, explaining how things work. So I think, and that's why when I did decide to quit academia, my immediate thought was like, well, I'll just do lecturing, you know. So instead of being a researcher, I'll go down the teaching route. And that was genuinely my thought when I quit my job. It wasn't I'm going to be a full-time hula hooper forever. It was, I'm going to be a science teacher, so, or a lecturer or whatever. But yeah,
that's actually a really interesting conversation I had with you after Swoop last year, which was about we're talking about the ways people learn, and the way, if people are visual learners, or which way they take things in. And you were saying about an activity where you have to try and think about, was it getting directions to somewhere? Can you explain that? Because I thought that was really super interesting.
Yeah, so basically this is like a common thing. I found this on the internet, not mine. So essentially there's like lots of ways of being able to tell what sort of learner you are. So some people are more visual learners, so like you need to see something to be able to understand it. Some people are more verbal learners, they need to hear the description. And some people are more kinesthetic or movement based, so you need to actually do it before you think. And so there's lots of little tricks you can use, and there's lots of things you can listen out for that people are saying, but one of the tricks is to get someone to explain like where the nearest shop is from their front door. And so people who are like quite movement learners, they'll tend to like oh, so you go around this corner and then you go straight, you know, and they'll tend to like use their arms to do things, and then visual learners tend to like use landmarks. So it's very much like, oh, and then there's like a red statue, with a thing, and like, and you know, so you can really like, so visual learners will tend to use like visual landmarks, and verbal learners tend to know the actual street names and things like that. Wow. Like they'll be like, go down so and so street. This is how I am actually a verbal learner, to be fair, but
I'm terrible with street names.
Me too, I'm terrible, but it's just one of the ways you can do it. Like I think for me in classes, the easiest way is when people are talking to you and asking questions. So so if someone says to you, oh, can you show me that again? Can you just show it to me from this angle? Whereas like, you know, and verbal learners will quite often say like, oh, can you just say again? Like they'll actually say, and they'll actually, can you tell me again? Rather than saying, can I see it again? Whereas the movement learners, they're just like, they'll often say, how does it feel? Or it feels like, more often they'll say something like, it feels like I'm doing this when I'm doing that. And so, you know, I think I think this is something that's like really key to every teaching experience, is really understanding what you are. Like that is your superpower. If you know what you are, then you know what you're going to miss. Because this, and you can really see it when you watch teachers, because they teach how they want to be taught. And if you've never thought outside of how you want to be taught, it's hardest for the kinesthetic learners, I have to say. Like the people who are movement learners, when you try and explain as a movement learner to other humans, like how to do things, you're like, you just do it like this. And if you just keep trying it, it'll work. And all of the verbal, visual people are like, I'm going to die. Oh my God, I've got no idea. Why aren't you telling me which way my hand is?
Yeah.
So I actually think like the people who have the most difficulty with teaching is definitely like kinesthetic learners. Tend to use a lot of metaphors, which I actually think is extremely useful for when you are teaching kinesthetic learners. So I don't know, and yeah, I think it's something to be very aware of. It's what I teach a lot in my teacher training. I think this sort of idea of like learning about yourself and your own strengths and weaknesses as a hooper. Basically, they become your weaknesses and strengths. They become the opposite as a teacher. So if you're super flexible, for instance, as a hooper, yes, that's fantastic when you're a hooper because everything's going to be amazing. But when you go to teach things, you're teaching that from a point of strength. So you've got no idea, like you're immediately not able to say, well, what happens if you can't kick your leg up really high? What happens if you don't have the strength in your arm or the flexibility here to do that? So I think that's something, and then your weaknesses as a hooper. So the fact that I have really tight hamstrings has become, it's really annoying in life. And as in my hoop life, it's just annoying. There's certain things I just can't do properly. But as a teacher, it's fantastic because I can say, if you can do high kicks, do it like this. But I've had to work out ways around, teaching things that mean that isn't a problem. So I have to watch out, the things I have to watch out for. I have very flexible hips and very flexible arms. So there's been a couple of occasions where I've noticed like I'm teaching something and like 80% of the class hasn't got it. And I'm like, this is something I find easy that I haven't spotted, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, how annoying. So yeah, but I mean, I think part of being a good teacher is realizing that you're always going to get better. Yeah. Like, it isn't like there's going to be a point where you've got the perfect way of teaching something. It's just not true. I'm doing these online classes at the moment, and it's the first time I've taught weekly classes in like, about 8 years or something. I'm just loving it. And because I'm teaching them 3 times a week, I'm coming up with new teaching techniques for stuff that I've been teaching for like, 13 years. But there's things that are coming up in my brain and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. And also the onlineness of it means I can't depend on like, because like I'm thinking that's a huge strength, because there's certain things like you have to work out exactly the right way of saying it and exactly the right way of standing and the right camera angle, because people, they're not going to be able to understand it otherwise. You can get away with a lot more when you're in person, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it's but then there's also benefits, huge benefits to online teaching, like being able to bring your hands really close to the camera and show super close up to everyone in the room without them having to bring their heads in, like grip switches and stuff. So I really like that. But yeah, I think I'm learning all the time how to be a better teacher, and I'm excited, and it's very humbling when you come up with some like new way of, or actually, and it's not whether you come up with it or whether someone else, you go to another class and someone says something and you're like, how have I never thought of saying that during teaching that trick? Like, oh my goodness, that changes everything. So, and then you're like, oh, of course I do that. Like, why don't I say that? So I really love watching other people teaching and really sort of, and learning from them, you know, and picking up tips and tricks. And sometimes I do get a bit like, I've got ego issues like every other human. And sometimes I'll go to a class and I'll be like, yeah, I think my way's better. And then I'll be like, what is it? Not though, isn't it? Oh, so yeah, I think like there's definitely times where I've had it's taken me a bit longer to switch over to a different teaching method than it should, because I'm determined that my method my method is the best and this other method is not good. I'm like, oh, Emma, honestly. But you know,
I found it really
helpful. Be aware.
So for some reason, I've been put into a lot of situations over the years where I've had to co-teach with other hoopers on tours and at events, and again, sometimes you're like, I wouldn't teach this way, and I would try to communicate with them beforehand. I'm like, are you okay with when either of us is teaching, having go, oh, and I would say this is a really useful thing, because some people are like, yeah, that's great, and other people are like, can you just leave me to say my bit, and then if you want to help when you're going around, that's fine. Or I taught a whole tour with Jeff from the Hoop Hooligans, who's lovely, but he learns things so easily. He'd be like, and then you do this, and everyone's like, with twin hooping, and I'd be there going, okay, what do we got going on here? And it just learns the complete opposite way to me, and it's great because he's a performer more than a teacher. He'd be like, I'm going to teach a different set of tricks every workshop. So we did 14 workshops where every one was different tricks. And so I'd be like, okay, I'll help out. I didn't know what any of the tricks were at the start of the workshop. So I'd be like, where's your thumb? What's your hand doing there? And it was great because it's like we both taught in different ways. So I learned a lot of new tricks and ways that like visual and kinetic learners learn. And I would break it down verbally. And it was, it's very, very good to kind of see, okay, you teach totally different to me. What is it you say? And are you comfortable with me being like, okay, for the people who learn a different way, maybe you want to know this. But it's very much down to like communicating with the teacher beforehand, or the same with being in workshops. Like I love it the way that like people like Bags at Swoop would say, if there's any other people in the workshop who can do this, feel free to go around and help people. I'm not going to feel like you're stepping on my toes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in two minds about that. I'm always a bit like, I am a bit of a control freak. I'm gonna just be honest about it. And I do have, there's certain things that I think are taught wrong. Like, and I'm not gonna lie about it. I'm not gonna name names. But there's certain things that like I feel like people, like the hoop community has picked up bad habits in, and it's made it harder for people to learn stuff. And like especially things like wedgies and stuff like that, like people have such bad habits with the wedgies. And I mean, maybe I'm doing the same thing for other teachers. Maybe other teachers are like, oh, there's habits that Emma has picked up. But you know, it's just me being a control freak and me liking to teach things the way I teach them. And so I do get a bit like, there's certain things where I'm like, no one else is allowed to say anything. But then but then obviously, I mean, most of the time it is really useful. I'm just, but I do get a bit control freak about it sometimes, especially because there is different, like people have different ways of teaching things. And obviously the way you teach them, you think that's the right way to teach it. So you clearly think, if you've seen the way other people teach, you clearly think that's wrong because you don't teach it that way. So I'm sort of like, okay. So I've definitely had some moments where I'm like, no one else teach anything. But yeah. I mean, and then on other times I'm like, everyone help, and especially with big groups. I mean, it's just like, it's so hard to not have the help. But yeah, no, I am a bit of a control freak about it, if I'm honest. It's just like, don't anyone teach, don't like it. But no, then it changes depending on what I'm teaching, I think, and the size of the group. You know, if you don't have a lot of time, then obviously utilizing the other teachers in the room makes perfect sense, you know. So but I also have a bit of a thing sometimes that I like quite want the teachers to enjoy my workshop, because I like quite often I've put quite a lot of thought into making sure it's like got enough diversity in it that the teachers will also gain something out of it. Like, I think this comes from teaching at Swoop so much and teaching in environments where you've got ridiculously talented hoopers, for instance, yourself. And, you know, like half the people you're teaching are like exceptional hoopers. And you're like, and the other half are like beginners to intermediate hoopers. And so you know, I think over the years, I've like become a bit of a, like, it's been my thing to like make sure when I'm teaching a workshop that I'm like, right, I want everyone to have something that they can get out of it. And so it's almost like a little pride thing, because I'm like, come on, I've constructed this workshop so you guys can get something out of it. So I want to make sure you guys, and it's like and then if people aren't and they feel like they have to teach as well, then they're not getting something out. I think that's where my little, again, it's an ego thing. It's all just ego. I'm right with it. Slightly out of control. So it's okay. Just got to push it down sometimes. Let it escape. It's fine. Anyway,
One
sorry.
thing I really love is like, obviously every week we're asking, or every episode we're asking people about hoopers who inspire them. And I really love the fact you've given me like a breakdown into different sections, and I want to include all of them because it's great. I think it's a really lovely way for people to discover people they might not know about and check out what they're doing. So, and you gave me a list of 3 teachers as one of yours, which is great. So
Yeah.
the 3 teachers you've picked, and I've got to say, the first one is Mike Hayataka, that hoop guy. Mike, so far, has been, we've got a few interviews coming up where people have already given the list. He's on every list so far. So,
Of course he is. Of
nice.
course he is. The guy's ridiculous. I mean, take out the fact that his hooping is like out of control good. Like, he did that performance. I mean, every performance he's ever done at anything I've ever been at, I'm like, but like half of it, what? I'm just like shouting, what was that? Like, it's like I never know whether I just want to give up hooping completely because there's no point, or like it makes me want to practice more. But yeah, I'm just well impressed with Mike all the time. Like, he's such a good human. He's like a fantastic human being as well. Like, he's just really on it with everything, and his teaching is really, really strong. Like, he's very, very like on it with like where placement of hands things are and stuff. And I remember he was teaching rolls at something, I can't even remember what it was, and he taught bringing the wrist into it, which is how I teach rolls. And I was like, I really felt like super validated. I was like, yes, Mike teaches rolls the same as me. I must be teaching them correctly. And it was really like, so I definitely hold him up there as as someone that I really, I learn a lot. And I don't mean I just learn the tricks. Like, I learn a lot from the way he teaches as well. And I think that's something that, you know, I'm a teaching snob. You know, that's actually, it's the thing I do most. You know, I actually don't hoop that much, really, at all, if I'm perfectly honest. Like, I mainly just teach, and I love it, and that's actually what I love. And I've decided to stop feeling bad about that, you know. And so when I go to workshops, quite often I am looking more at how people are teaching than the actual tricks themselves. It's actually quite rare that I'm really looking. So I'm always really interested in how people are putting things across, and I always learn a lot from his workshops. So yeah, he's definitely a top human, top teacher. Good work.
Nice.
Good work, Hayataka.
The second person you picked was Pamba, who I've taken a couple of her workshops actually at Sweep and at Cyber Sweep. Amazing teacher. What kind of stuff is it you love about Amber's teaching?
I just think Amber's like I feel like our brains work in a similar way, and so I really enjoy how she breaks things down. I think it's super clear. Like, I mean, I pride myself on being clear, but she's just like clear. Like, yeah. And I really appreciate her. Like, the stuff she does is very stuff that I really like. And I'm always, every time I go to one of her workshops, I'm like, how have I not thought of that before? Yeah. Because we do a lot of similar stuff, and I'm like, this is super cool. Like, I've been playing with this stuff for years. How is it that I haven't like spotted this super cool thing that you're now teaching? No, I think Amber's amazing, and I've got and I think her precision with her teaching is really good, and she's very calming. Like she's very sensitive. I remember, so she came to my teacher training a long time ago now, like the first one, and I think the worry was that she's so calm that it would be hard for her to hold the group, but it's just not the case, actually. So she's just fantastic. She gets fantastic reviews from Swoop every year. She beat me last year.
Wow. I've got to say,
a little bit.
I love her teaching, and I love her tricks. And I had the same thought of like, because she said, I was worried that because you were in the workshop, you'd already know all the tricks. I was like, I've been doing one of those tricks for about 5 years and teaching it, and I haven't done those combinations and thought of doing them.
No, it's so annoying. And you're like, how can I not have thought of these things? It's amazing. So it's so nice when someone's brain is like, it feels like it's like doing what, I don't know. I love it. I love it. I think she's great. And I think it's interesting, obviously, because she's a pathologist. She's like got a full-on proper job, and she just does the hoop on the side as well as being an acro yogi on the side as well. So she's like, and actually she was, so she works in pathology, which is where I used to work in the hospital. So it's like interesting because it's like that, like I know she's in the world that I used to be in. She's a bigger boss than I was like bottom rung. She's like boss lady. But yeah, I mean, I think she's just an exceptional teacher, and I thought it would be, and actually genuinely does inspire me as a teacher. So I also thought it'd be interesting to have her on the list, because again, she's just not as well known, because she's just not out and about.
And I've got to say,
not out and about as much.
Her cyber swoop workshop is probably, because I say I'm dyspraxic, I get very easily confused, and I think her twins workshop at cyber swoop is one of the only twins workshops I've never had to ask a single question at. And for that to be an online one, and because normally I'm like, which is that, your left hand or your right hand? Is that happening like this? Not I say everything was so clearly taught, I didn't have to ask a single question, and that's with it being, you know, not even in front of you on a screen. So super impressed by her. The last one you picked, I don't actually know this person. So you picked Trish Stolte. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah. So this is actually Trish is a Canadian hooper. She's been coming to my online classes, and she quite often messages me afterwards, or we have a chat about what we've been learning. She's been hooping forever, and she's in Ottawa, and this is like a very specific one for me at the moment, because I'm just learning quite a lot from Trish. Kind of like what I was saying about, earlier about, you know, when someone says something, you're like, oh, that's a both better way of teaching that. Why don't I do that? And we were talking about 3-beat weaves the other day, because she's in my twins classes, and she was telling me how she teaches them, and I was like, that's really good. Why? But I feel like I'm finding that she says things sometimes, and I've noticed she does it, and I know you do this as well, and I don't know if she's doing it the way that I know that we have done it, where you ask a question in a class where you know the answer, but you know it'll help every single other person in the class if they hear it from the teacher. She does that all the time with me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should have said that. So I'm realized that's a very personal one for me at the moment. Like, I think she's a really great teacher, and she's really insightful in how to break things down. And I think that's been really helpful for me personally in my classes. And it's really nice when someone does it to me, honestly, because again, it's this whole ego thing. Oh, I'm such a great teacher. And then I'm like, oh yeah, but I can always improve those. Oh yeah, there's that thing that I haven't said. So I think for me, that's just a personal one for me. I would have put you on there, Kay, as well, actually, to be fair.
Oh, that's fine.
You only gave me 3. You only gave me 3. And I wanted to be, I thought I'd pick someone that's like Mike is like my general, like events one. Amber is like someone that I definitely learn from a lot and is like less well known, and Trish is like a person I'm having a lot of personal contact with at the moment, who is 100% improving my teaching. So yeah, that's like, I was trying to think about it, you know, like,
it's exciting to me,
realms.
I'm selfish as well. I want to find out people through this as well. It's one of my
exactly.
It's like that gets some more inspiration for myself. Which actually, when we're talking about 3 hoopers who inspire you just by their hooping, the first one I didn't know, and after you mentioned them, I've been looking through their Instagram and becoming somewhat obsessed, is Techswan.
Not even a real human. Not even a real human. Where did he come from? And what does he do with hula hoops? Yeah. It's been a really long time since I've actually like watched videos. It's specifically actually his twin stuff that I'm like a little, I mean, his single hoop's great as well. But his movement with his twins is like, because I quite often see techie stuff and it's fantastic. Like, don't get me wrong. And I love the tech and all that, but it doesn't like call to me to like watch it. And it doesn't make me think why don't I know how to do all of these things, you know? And so I think it hasn't yet, because I don't really practice, if I'm perfectly honest, but I've got this idea in my head that I'm going to have these like weeks. I'm going to do like 2 weeks of learning how to hoop like Techswan, 2 weeks of learning how to do twin hoops like Jasmine Kenna. Do you know what I mean? Like, and just like focus on that person for like 2 weeks and just be like, and just learn what you like from their stuff. And obviously I think it would take longer than that with some of the stuff, but I mean, mostly for me, I mean, I've been hooping long enough, and especially with the twin stuff, like I have a big enough background that a lot of it I can pick up relatively quickly, because again, you know, I've got a background of practicing sort of the basics. Anything to do with balance, not so much. Yeah. But probably have to practice for like maybe 8 years before some of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, Techswan, I find that when I very rarely like watch videos on Instagram. I post on Instagram because it's kind of like the expected thing, and I interact with people. And I generally keep up with my friends, actually, a lot of my non-hoop friends. Like, I quite enjoy using Instagram and Facebook actually for that purpose, which I suppose is what it's normally used for. And so I don't often like watch hoop videos that much. I definitely went through a few years of that was what I did. Probably in the transition between hooping loads and not hooping very much, I watched a lot of hoop videos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's yeah, Techswan. I do find that, especially when he posts like you know, when he posts a twin video, I will sit and I'll watch the whole thing, and I'll just be like, awesome.
From beginning to end, it's just mesmerizing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Second
one, musicality is fantastic. Yeah, go.
The second one you've gone with is Albinoplant, Melissa, who's actually our next guest on the show. What stuff is it you love about her hooping?
Again, I think it's just I like her tutorials. I like how she teaches. Again, I think she's a great teacher. I just like the difference in it. Like, I think maybe it's not so different now because there's a lot of people that do those sorts of things on Instagram. But definitely when I first was watching her, I really felt like it was like, I mean, it is novel. It's just that it's not so novel now because people are moving like she moves, essentially, and are taking inspiration from that and changing it. And that's fantastic and doesn't take away from any of that. But I really feel like that she really it changed things for me in my head about how twins should look. And I like her techiness, and I like her movement. And I actually just recently saw a video actually that she'd made years ago. I think it was like, it's literally years old. I'll have to find it out for you actually. I'm sure everyone else has seen it a million times, but it was like, it's still a video I think I could look. It's the video I'm going to use when I have my 2-week Melissa, inspiration. 2 weeks of Albinoplant. Yeah, gonna learn it all. Because what I was thinking of was doing like 2 weeks of learning their stuff, and then maybe taking a private class with them at the end and asking them anything that like I hadn't quite, like, I'm like, oh, can you just show me this thing? And I thought that might be a nice, also supports them, and I learn loads, and that sounds awesome. So yeah, that's like kind of my plan.
Oh, I like
one of my many plans. Yes.
The final one you picked again is someone who I didn't know before, and again I was like checked out a whole bunch of her videos. It was Flowmies.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, and I was completely
just like a bubble of energy and amazingness. I just think she's fantastic. Like every time I watch her videos, I mean, it helps that I'm a bit of a Psytrance fan as well, and she's always got like a bit of Psy in the background, and I'm like, and she's just like smile, and she's actually like that in real life. She came to my teacher training last year or the year before, I think the year before, and she's just an amazing human, like amazing. But yeah, I just, in terms of like videos that I find I stop and I watch, like she just makes me smile. So, and she's great, you know, she's got loads of like crazy flippy things and nonsense, and she's a super interesting human outside of that. I actually did a, no joke, naked flow jam, naked hoop jam at one of the two. Yeah, you know me well enough.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like something you do.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like me at all. But gone full German. So this time in Germany and in the spas, and now I don't care. But anyway, but yeah, we did. She ended up. She showed her animation, which is all about sort of women, not like women like enjoying your own body and understanding yourself and stuff. Really amazing animation. And then she just got us to do a naked hoop jam. And you know when you're just like, there's no way that's going to happen, and then it did. It actually happened. I still can't believe it happened at my teacher training. Like absolutely mental. Like the least likely person to have a naked hoop jam at the thing. It was the most like bizarre, like surreal but amazing experience. And this is in Tadar, where there's like giant mirrors. Like, so it was like so intense. It was like such an intense experience for me, like, because I sort of stripped down really slowly. It's all women. Like I stripped down like really slowly, and then I'm like, you're literally in your bra and pants. Like, why do I care? Like, why is it such a big deal? Because then I was like, I'll try anything. Like, I'll try literally anything. So what is my problem with this? Like, why can't I just take these off and have a hoop for a minute? It doesn't matter. You were in spas where you're naked. Like, you know, it's not like you're in changing rooms and you take your clothes off. You don't care about this. It was such a surreal experience, and such a like interesting like discussion in your own brain about how why it is that some people are just okay to be like, yeah, I love being naked, and you're like so like, wow, I can't even do this. You sort of realize quite how much like rubbish and nonsense you've got in your brain about your own body. It was phenomenal. And so she's just great. Like, and it's nothing to do with that. That's like a separate entity. I just love her hoop videos. So yeah, she's a favorite. She's a favorite of mine for sure.
Nice. And actually, that leads on to an interesting topic, because like I completely get where you're coming from. I'm one of those people who used to change under their like towel.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Change your room
under the bed. Me and my sister, yeah, we lived in the same bedroom, and we would like literally get changed under the covers. And now we don't care. But it's like, are you for real? We were in the same room as each other. Why did I bother? Yeah. Like how long did it take me to get ready, waiting for the changing room? And all these times where for years, like my mates would like go and jump in the river, or they would get changed into their swimming costumes at the side of a, like not even doing it naked, just like changing into their swimming costumes at the side of like a lake or something. I couldn't even do that, you know? And so I just feel like the amount I missed out on because of some random idea of like my skin being like offensive to other people, or like if people saw a flash of something, it would be like the end of the world. And it's such a, I'm so happy. German spas.
That's actually where I went in a Psytrance festival, even though I'm not a big fan of Psytrance, but I love the atmosphere. And I used to go to Psytrance festivals just because the people are so nice. And they had communal showers. And I was like, I really need a shower. It's boiling hot, but I don't know if and then that was the thing that kind of got me more comfortable. For me, it was always, I'm hairy like a werewolf. And I was always conscious of the fact no one else seemed to be hairy like a werewolf. And I'd be like, oh, I can't take my clothes off, because they'll be like, why are you so hairy? That was something for me that definitely was, you know, hard to get over. And I'm more comfortable with now. But even doing burlesque and things, I'm always conscious of the fact that I have to pay a lot of money in hair removal to be able to do it and feel comfortable, whereas other people just seem to be hairless like naturally. Like,
I don't know if people are actually hairless naturally. I think there's a lot of hair removal.
No, there is a lot of hair removal.
Like, I'm naturally, to be fair, I'm naturally very unhairy. I have to say, I am naturally, like, you know, I'm like, you know, I am, and I've known that like my whole life. So it's like I totally. And I have friends who are completely
school, like, everyone would get changed. I went to an all-girls school. Everyone would be getting changed. And I'd be like, why? Everyone else's hair seems to fit nicely into their underpants, whereas mine is like the whole upper leg. So I'd be like, this is weird. Why doesn't anyone else look like that?
I actually had electrolysis, to be fair. I just, that's one way of dealing with it. So, there you go. See, you said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Well, there you go. Let's just talk about it. Let's get in there. No, but like, but yeah, but actually it was a really big deal for me because I, you know, all of that stuff around like shaving and like shaving rashes and all of that nonsense, it just adds to that, to all the other nonsense you've got about being naked, which I think is very, very UK based actually. Like, it was so refreshing. I mean, you remember what, I mean, you know what it's like. We do, I don't know if you, we had like French exchanges, and then like you had to go in the showers and all the girls showered together and they didn't care and they all had hair, and it was like, you know, and I'm sure the hair thing's different now because of like the globalized sort of idea about body hair. But definitely when I was younger, it was like the French girls and the foreign girls were just like, you know, they didn't care and they just showered together and it didn't matter. And I was just like, but you know, but it was really interesting going to like German spas and stuff and realizing that, like, you know, it's all shapes and sizes. It's not, and you start to realize that the only naked bodies you've seen are basically, like, especially when you're young, the only naked bodies you've seen are people in films or people on billboards. So you think that's what everyone looks like, and you're like, and they don't. Even the people that look like the people who are, they no one looks the same. Like this is like, so I think that was a real sort of eye opener for me by going to these sort of spas and stuff in Germany and realizing all these people are like completely different shapes and sizes and ages and whatever, and everyone looks completely different. And once you've got over that, you're just like, wow, okay, this is cool. This is cool. And it's more like, it's not like I'm getting naked because you should look at me and be naked. It's like, I'm naked because of convenience, or because it's like, why would we have clothes on in the sauna? Because that's unhygienic.
Yeah.
And no one, it doesn't matter. It's not, no one's looking at anyone, no one's doing anything. It's just like, you just put your clothes, you put your towel around you, and then you go out. And it's like, it's such a different experience to the experiences I've had in the UK, which is very different to that.
Do you think that how has being part of the hoop community and the circus community kind of affected kind of your idea of body image and things like that? Have you had positive or negative experience of it within the hoop world? Like, what do you find with that?
I mean, definitely there's been negative stuff. I mean, I have never been the tiniest or the most conventionally beautiful of the hoop crew, you know, and especially at the very beginning of like the hoop world, especially in the States, it was who's the most beautiful. And, you know, you do feel like the ugly duckling when you turn up and everyone is these like super graceful, like insanely beautiful looking humans. And you're like, you're talking to them and you're like, you're not even real. Like, you look like you're from a film. Like they do, like all these people like Christabel and Spiral and, you know, like Shakti, they're not like normal looking humans. They're like insanely beautiful. Like their skin's like looks different to like other humans. You're like, what the hell is going on here? But there is this definitely this like, there was definitely a sort of a look, and I'm not saying anyone wasn't mega talented as well, because obviously they were, but it's like, but there was definitely a lot of talent in the States at that time, who didn't look like the conventional, like the top people, and it did seem like a beauty contest at a lot of it, and so you're the quirky British people. Which is great. And, you know, and I pushed that for a long time. And, you know, and I went down this for a long time. I went down this kind of more grotesque kind of idea of it. And instead of like, that's what I did. I got into the like looking really crazy and like loads of lycra and like doing lots of crotch emphasis. And part of that is me. Like, that's not like being funny and trying to entertain people is me, but it was also a smokescreen, you know, because it was quite scary going up on these stages with all these like beautiful, like lithe looking, like, you know, humans that, and you're being the comedy aside means you don't have to worry so much about being compared to like that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely that's been a thing, 100%. And fighting body image stuff, like there's been times in my hoop career where I've got pictures back from conventions and I'm like devastated and I've sat in tears, you know. I mean, my body image and stuff is 1,000 times better than it has been in the past. You know, I've dealt with like a lot of body image crap over the years, as most people have, to be honest. But yeah, there are definite times where that has been a negative, 100%. Like you know, you're in a image driven industry,
yeah,
you know, and it's a main reason why I don't perform, honestly, because I've never felt confident enough in my body to take on how hardcore that is, you know, being up there in like tight clothing in front of people and comparing yourself to other hoop performers and stuff. It's not good for my mental health. Yeah. Honestly, it's just not good for it. And it's not worth me doing it. So yeah, like, but yeah, like there's also been positives, you know, like I'm around incredibly beautiful, incredibly accomplished humans who are all different shapes and sizes. And so I have been constantly, you know, I get exposed to, although the outside image of hooping is quite often a very stylized and everyone looks a certain way and all that stuff, actually the real life community is incredibly diverse in size, shape, you know, everything. Like, you know, everyone looks different, and and that's a very beautiful thing to realize, that everyone's different and everyone's amazing. And, you know, it's not always the most beautiful person in the room that holds your attention, actually. You know, it's quite like there's someone like, you know, you go to these conventions and I'm like completely awestruck by the look of some people, and they are lovely, like, and inspiring and everything. But then you'll meet someone else who maybe doesn't fit in that category, who is like the best person you've ever met in your life. And you're like, wow, I just want to hang out with you all the time. And those people don't fit a visual like stereotype. Yeah. They don't, you know. It's like everyone's different. And I think the more people I've met and the more, you know, And the more people I've been exposed to, the more I realize that that's something really cool. And I think that's helped with my own body image and feeling. But I also think just age has helped. Like, I think just being older is really nice. Like, it's loads better, guys. If anyone that's watching, if you're like, honestly, it's so much better being older. Like, you just can't be bothered with all this stuff anymore. And like, I often think about it now. Like, if I get bothered by something now, I quite often think, oh, you're not going to care at all about that in like 5 years. So like, and that helps me get rid of it now, actually, which is really nice. So yeah, I think I don't know. So I think pros and cons.
Yeah. That's the end of part 1 of the interview with Emma Kenna, but if you'd like to watch part 2, there's a link underneath. In that, we'll be discussing lots more things like videos that have inspired Emma, music that she likes, learning languages later in life, and lots more. And also there's links to all the things that Emma mentioned in this video underneath as well. So thank you for watching.